Good morning, everybody, and thank you for coming. Thank you for dedicating your precious Saturday morning to me. What I would like to do, we have 3 hours. I know that many people have seen Infinite. How many of you have seen Infinite Now in the Philharmonie? And how of you have heard it? Okay, so everybody that have seen or heard it, raise your hands so that I see you. These are most of the people in the room. Okay. And for the other people who haven't, you will get to see small fragments. So what I'm going to do today is following. I just got yesterday night, or maybe yesterday morning, I got the video recording of Infinite Now, which is my latest opera, about which I would like to talk today. And I was really taken by the video. I think it's very, very well done. And so what I would like to do, I'm supposed to analyze this opera. The opera is 2.5 hours. A presentation of 3 hours would not even scratch the surface, but I will try to scratch the surface. And I will try to talk about some very seminal issues in the opera. And I will do this analysis less by looking at score, even though I will show a little bit of the score, but more by the ear. It will be a kind of a listening analysis. I hope to be done with that part of the presentation until 11:30. I think I will be, for sure. And then we will take a break of 15 minutes. I know that many people have a lot of questions for me. So I will look forward to your questions. I'm supposed to also talk about hidden. And I will see in the break, I will also talk to you, to some of you. We will see what we would like to do in the second half. If we would like to include hidden in this talk, or just focus on Infinite Now and have a real conversation about it. Because discussion is sometimes very worthwhile after you have digested something. So that's still to be decided. However, the first part is the kind of audible analysis of Infinite Now. Let me just say a few words of introductions to the piece and say that Infinite Now is a 2.5 hour, I call it experience. It's called an opera, but for me, maybe the right word would be an event or an experience. And it started with Front, the theater piece by Luc Perceval, which toured Europe 2 years ago, or no, 2014, 15. And Front deals with First World War. It brings part of Nothing New in the on the Western Front from Remarque, fragments from that, fragments from letters of soldiers, and some other fragments spoken by a nurse that took care of the soldiers. All this is together interwoven like a kind of non-linear quilt of voices of the war. Front by itself was really also kind of an experience. All these people sitting on the stage with suits, basically, and just talking, and very few pictures, like them coming and playing football with a scalp. And that was kind of a very weird picture that I remember. When I was asked to do, I was asked by Luc Perceval and Aviel Kahn, the director of the opera in Ghent, to take Front and make it into an opera. When I saw Front, I realized that I can probably not do it. However, they said then, or Luke Percival said in our talk, that he is ready to restart Front, that he is ready to open it, to crack it open, and I can bring to the table what I would like. So I brought to the table a story by Chaya Czernowin, an avant-garde Chinese writer who wrote a book of short stories called The Embroidered Shoe. I will write her name. It's not very good. Okay, let's write it again. Can you see? All right. Chaya Czernowin. This was, I love the story from that book, which is called Homecoming, and this is a story about which I wanted to work for a very long time. So I also thought that that story, which is a story about a woman who goes into a house that she thinks she knows, she goes in the evening and she finds herself in the house with the same old man who lives in the house and who always kind of greeted her, but this time he's angry and he says actually she cannot leave the house because the house is built on an abyss. There is no way to leave it. So the situation of this woman, and we follow her reaction. At first she thinks he is crazy, and then she slowly learns to see that there is no evening, no morning, it's always the same light. Then she tries to make fire against his directions, and she thinks nothing happened, but he realizes that half of the ceiling is gone. So it is a story of adjusting to a situation where you don't have exit, basically. And at the end, they just continue their life kind of together, you know, talking from time to time between them. The end is that she is not bored. I'm not bored. I'm only listless. That's the last sentence of the book. I thought that bringing the woman to the environment of Front, a woman who is also seeing no end to her situation, no control, she cannot change anything, just like the soldiers in Front who are getting killed every day, but it's a totally absurd situation, playing football with their enemies and then getting killed the next day. I thought that those two situations can really throw a very interesting light on each other. I also, in Front, was very, very much missing a feminine presence. It was very macho kind of utterance, and I wanted a statement, rather. And I wanted to make it more round. So when we have both stories, they start to illuminate each other. And that gives me, as the composer, the possibility to actually take this illumination, take this light that emanates from the way that they relate to each other, and develop it to my own story. So I'm not interested so much in history. I'm also not interested so much in the, aspect of the balance between the sexes. That was not my idea. What I was very much interested in, or where I felt that this is my push and my motivation to write the piece, was thinking about today and right now, where we all, most of us, feeling very helpless in our situation in the world. I think a lot of people probably in this room share this feeling with me too, that, we are stripped of some kind of security. It seems like everything can go towards a lot of directions any day, and we cannot exactly influence it. It is still now in a in a very vague state because we still have our houses, our, our food, our family, we are not in a war situation. So for us, it's only metaphorical, but it is very present. And this is what I wanted to talk about this situation and what happened when it really becomes extreme. But in the extremity of it, actually something happens, and that's something that I remember personally from my own time when I was adolescent, and it's a very personal thing, but I will share it with you. When I was going through my teenage, I think that I went through very, very difficult experiences. And I remember very viscerally the feeling of walking in the street, not knowing how am I going to make it to the next month, really not knowing anything, and very aware of not knowing, holding a stick in my hand, and there was a fence with columns that went like this. And I'm going with my stick, and I'm going tat, 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 which has become a big motive in my music. But I'm just going tat, 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 making this noise. And as I'm making this noise, I'm becoming aware that my experience is so sharp right then, that I'm so aware of, the sidewalk, the people walking by, the color of the sky. My ears are open. I hear all the noises. And I am becoming actually at that moment very grateful for a moment before I fall back to my depression and anxiety. For a moment, I become very grateful for this ability to feel. And that ability to feel is vitality. And vitality, sometimes when we are, when we have ate enough, when we have our family near us, when the house is surrounding us, we don't really have so much vitality sometimes. We take so many things for granted. But when there is a real problem and when you go through a real experience, suddenly vitality becomes a very, very important element in your palette of feeling. This opera is very depressing, it's very dark, but it is actually about vitality. And the first grain of vitality, and how you get to that first grain of vitality. So, this is as a word of introduction. Does anybody have any questions up to now as for the background of the piece?
About your source.
Yeah? I think you can okay, for the recording. Yeah.
Thanks. I had a small question just about the sources of the texts. I know that you mentioned there's no female characters, but there is this nurse Elizabeth who comes up. Is that from the front play, or is that a...
This is a trap. This is the name of the book that I cannot remember. There is another book involved, and I'm really sorry. It is in, I will get to it. Nobody mentions it, but one person did the research and found the name of the book that Luc Perceval and his dramaturgs used, and that name, I lost it as well. So I will get to it, and I can give it. It's an amazing book written by a nurse. Mm-hmm. Apparently, it's a short book, but it really brings very raw experience of how she was in the hospital.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Okay. So what I would like to do now is talk about a few issues, and I will just go by them, go one by one. As I said, I'm going to play them to you rather than to look at the score and analyze note by note. I'm going to start by saying that we have 6 acts. We have 6 acts. And I would like to, I'm prefacing the listening by some data. The first act, I didn't succeed to finish it, but just listen and remember the numbers. First act is 24 minutes long. Second act is 22. Third act is 20. Fourth act is 29. Fifth is 34. And sixth is 21. So that we have this kind of a structure, basically. No, that's exaggerated, only slightly. 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5. I'm exaggerating, it doesn't matter. And then the last one is, again, very short. Yeah, 6. If you look at that type of structure, each act, you know, the first act getting shorter, then the long one getting longer, it already tells you a lot about the structure, because normally, if I would want to write a 2.5 hours piece, I would do it exactly the opposite. 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6 to hold the tension, right? But I'm doing here something completely different. We will talk about that in a moment, about why. Each act has the same structure. So just like I started to write here, it starts with metal gates crashing for half a minute to a minute. It continues with an interlude. The interlude can be vocal, like a madrigal, or electronic, or both. And then we have material of homecoming, then we have material of front. This is right for the first and the second. The differentiation is very, very clear, first and second. In number 3, we have some very slight mixing of homecoming and front stuff. And number 4, which is really the kind of like the water line. Let's make order here. In number 4, what starts happening is that homecoming and front begin to mix. In the 5th, the interlude grows to become the biggest part of the 5th act. Suddenly, the interlude blows up. And in 6, everything is mixed. Everything is mixed. There is a half interlude and half homecoming front altogether. We will get to understand this much clearer. I will start by, and please excuse me, it takes time until it starts playing. But what's nice is that you will see pictures of the piece, which the people that have heard it a few days ago, by then I didn't have it, so that would be nice. It takes time for it to play for some reason. What I will play now is the metal gates. So the metal gates repeat in the beginning of each act, and they are taken from YouTube recording of prison doors. For some reason, it's not because we looked for the metaphor prison doors. We looked at many, many gates, and those gates were the most assertive. So we took some of those gates. We cut some of the pitches, and I made this small rhythm and melody out of that. And you will hear that we have metal up to number 6. And there are actually variations. And let's listen to those variations. Think about what, they are very strange kind of variations. Let's listen to them. Okay, this is the first one. Okay, let me do it a bit louder. This was very, very loud. And Eric, I'm going to put my maximum so that we get the best sound and you can adjust. But everything needs to be loud. Okay, we are moving to the second one. 24. Okay. Oops. No. Hard to pinpoint. Thank you. Just want to take 1 second for me. Okay. Just discovered something. Ta, G. Remember that. I will talk about the G later. I didn't know I had the G here. Okay, so as you heard, it's the same melody accompanied by the slow moving of the doors, yeah, of the moving doors. Let's go to number 3. 1, 6, 26. Okay, this was easy. Okay, next one. 135. Oh no, it's later. Oops. Okay. I think I'm becoming good at this. Okay, so we have the last one, by the way, is as you could notice. Wait, Chaya. As you could notice, before each of them there is silence, yeah. And the last one has actually only one, has only one beat. So it's not again a whole fragment, it's just one beat that closes the fifth act and one beat that opens the sixth act. So the most minimal, I don't need to play this. What's strange about these variations? Can anybody tell me? You all heard it, and I think each one of you knows the answer to my question.
They're very different. The last one has no pitch change anymore.
Right.
It becomes kind of more minimalist.
The resonance, no? The resonance is more long.
Oh, wait a second. I missed one. You are now reminding me that I skipped one.
The third one.
I skipped the third one. Okay, let me just go back because the third one is important. How come I skipped it? Okay. Nobody is perfect. Here we go. Let's do the third one and place it within the other one. Sorry about that. Okay. Because it is about the resonance. Okay. Thank you for reminding me. Okay. So, but what you said was very true. So normally with the variation form, we have the first, song or theme or whatever it is, and it is usually quite simple. And then as the variations go on, it becomes more and more ornamented and intricate. There is a feeling that something accumulates rather than stripped away. In these variations, I would say that from the third variation, things are actually stripped away. So the most visible parameters, for example, in the third variation, was stripped away, which is the pitch and what we added in the second variation, the contrast between the points to the lines. That was all taken away. But suddenly we got to hear the initial idea of the reverb or not reverb, and then the strange phenomenon that there is reverb, which sounds quite natural, but very unnaturally it wanes away and then it comes back as a crescendo, diminuendo and crescendo. All those things are very clearly notated in the score, and the time especially is something that I worked on very exactly. So the time is notated in just normal notation, when, especially from the third one, when all those things take place. Because I really wanted to show processes of accelerando and retardando that really have their own very strongly willed trajectory. So if, for example, that thing with the reverb would have been slightly faster or slightly longer, it would matter. It really I was really trying to get the right amount of time to make it sound in a way that we can really follow the idea, that it would sound as if that's how it should be. Not too short, not too long. Because sometimes when we compose, and that's very true for me, for example, when my music in the 90s was extremely fast. And it was really very written with very, very thin pencil. And the ideas were really staggered on top of each other on the surface. And at a certain point, I realized that nobody can follow that, which was what I wanted at the time, because I wanted my music to be a kind of a wall through which only few can peer and see what's really there. That was what I needed at the time. That went away now, and I wanted to actually not be hidden by that kind of wall. I wanted to show what is there. And that is why the temporal element where we are able to stay with the sound, to completely follow its evolution, and to completely understand what is at stake is very important. And that's why the length of the opera. Okay, so whereas in other variation form, we have an accumulation and an addition showing off the mastery of the composer, taking something so simple, sometimes even simplistic, and making it into a masterpiece. Here it's exactly the opposite. The last one is basically nothing, the last variation. For the 6, it's just 2 hits of the gate. The one before it are basically just the same pitch repeated in accelerando or in ritardando with some dynamic changes. The one before it was the one with the resonance. The second one was the one when we have the contrast, the same melody, not touched, just with the contrasting lines. And the first one, just this melody. So it's almost like here we took out everything that was not about the sound, and we stayed in the end only with the sound itself. Everything was stripped away, which is basically what is happening in the whole opera. And I will show it on a few layers. So this is an opera where basically, as I showed you, I'm going back to the form. I need probably 2. You know this already, right? So the same elements and how they interact. But if I now look at this, which was exaggeration of the length of the acts. And the 6th one is kind of special by itself. And we have here, So what we have here bringing the acts together where they start to mix, and then making the mixing much bigger, looking into it even bigger, and a kind of the end stage where everything is exposed. For me, that structure is not actually horizontal. And this is why I do not paint it horizontally. So what happens here is not a story that we have A, and then we have A1 or B, and then we have, etc. We have A, but different. And the story of the A is that the A's become more and more essential as we go down. And when I think about the structure in my mind, I actually see it like a kind of a vertical zooming in. Vertical zooming in. And that's what I'm going to intend to show you as I did with metal gates with a few other elements so that you can see how this way of thinking works on time. So let's go and look at the other element. I'm just jumping here to them because I'm realizing that I prepared much more than I have time for. But I will try to get to everything. We'll see. I'm going to go to the idea of the G. I got so excited when I heard that I have a G here already in the metal. And I would say this. Let me just frame it. I think that I'm going to not say anything. I'm going to play to you the appearances of the G in the opera. And I'm going to start actually from the end. I'm going to play the G of the last act. And then I'm going to play the G of the fourth act and the G of the second act, etc. And just know that the G's in all these three acts appear in a proportionally the same place, approximately the same place relatively in the act. So the G is like, when we talked about the verticality of the structure, the G is like a line that goes through like that, okay? I'm starting with the last act G. It is a long one, and we will hear the whole thing. All right. 2 hours, 4 minutes, 15. Okay. All right. Wait. That's the wrong one. Where is this? 2 hours, 19. Sorry, that's the fifth act. 19, 14. It's okay, I can deal with this in darkness. Oops. Okay. Sixth act, G. Starts with E and then it goes to the G. What?
You have many reds.
That's an E.
Fresh, clean shoes.
Bit quiet. Quiet. Eric, a bit quieter.
Bonjour à tous. Nous sommes très comptés, boss. als ich sie hinter seinem Kopf hervorziehe, sind sie blutig.
Okay. So this is the G. Please excuse, the recording is not yet worked on. So this is a very raw recording. There was just one pass, but for example, the G in the brass needs to be by far stronger. And yeah, it will be highlighted when we work on the recording next. So what you heard is an octave of G around the middle C, an octave of G. And inside it, this octave of G, the voices were kind of bending the G and slowly creating all these harmonies. When we will work on the recording, we will make the difference by far starker, because the G will be much stronger, and we succeeded to have it actually in the performances so that you were not sure you are hearing the voices. You didn't know if it's your imagination or not. As the time went on, you realize, no, they are really singing. But at first, it was really something hidden that slowly has been revealed. So the idea of slowly revealing what has been there all along, a kind of a topology just archaeological topology, where something that is revealed is something that actually was the base of everything that you have heard before. That's really very much in the base of that thinking, of the vertical thinking I've shown. Let's go to the next G in the fifth act. Again, in the recording, we need to take care of it, but okay. All right, this was this, and that's 2, 4, 15. Okay. 2. Oh, here we go. All right. All right.
Sister, sister. Their heads and knees and mangled testicles. Their eyes of delirium and mouths that cannot articulate and parts of faces. The nose gone or the jaw.
That's the E again.
As soon as I hear the owner telling me that below the cliff is the sea, I start to feel an irrational attraction to that imaginary world below. I don't know how long I've been at this house.
Brass muted underneath.
There are these things, but no man. So how could I be a woman here and not die of it?
I can't keep track. It's always so
E, G, okay, E and G, E and G again and again. And they are not dominant or anything, but they really are like two areas, places in proximity to each other. Let's say that the G is the lowest, and then you have the E that leads to the G from all sides. Yeah, all right? Let's go to the fourth act. Yeah, 1, 0, 3, 3, 24. Okay.
Sollen diese Zeilen nehmen. Von euch, von allen, die mir nahestehen. Von allen, die mir Gutes und von denen, die mir Übles wollten.
We must try to save his life. Help him recover.
Und von all dem, was mir lieb und wert ist.
Even the piano was very close to the G. All right, so we saw 3 appearances for the G, yeah? And the last one was really laid bare, 3 minutes, full brass. It's going to be even more brutal when we have worked on it. And we heard it in the hall. We had 2 different orchestras, and one of them had an amazing brass section, and it was so amazing to hear the brass. The other one, it was not as good, but we will, in the recording you can do everything. So in the last act, we have the G in an octave, but when it is in an octave, it's, as I said, laid bare. But when it's laid bare, we discover that inside it, there are new things to discover, yeah, the voices hiding inside. In the fourth act, as you could see, it is muted, it comes, but everything revolves around it. All the voices touch or go from the G. And in the third act, it appears. It's like kind of a shadow that goes over a landscape. But it's not exactly the center of that landscape. It's kind of oblique. So this is about the zooming in that we can hear with the E and the G. All right, now we are doing it very well in time. Now I would like to go a little bit to the electronics and play to you some kind of a progression. And the progression, let me just improve something that I would like to add to that. Just a second. Just let me just think about it for a moment. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I will have 2 examples of the electronics. So I'm going to look. So what happened? No, let's start from the beginning. What happened in the electronic is that we have lots of things. The electronics are a huge part of Infinite now. And they are comprised of field recordings, some synthetic materials that we created in the studio, a lot of overlapping layers that together create a kind of dynamic lava or whatever, something that develops. And I would like to, and the way that they are chosen is actually very, very varied. So I was interested in weight. I was interested in surface touch. So, you know, I'm thinking about the ear many times as a huge organ, and I'm very aware of the hair in the ear. So I'm asking myself many times when I hear a sound, how many hair does it move in the ear? Hairs, you know. There are sounds that squish all the hairs in the, when you have a white noise, no hair remains straight. They immediately lie down. And so that the ear in that way becomes kind of an instrument of touching sound, because you have to think about how the sound touches your ear. Some sounds are so thin and skinny that they succeed to go between the hair. And they even succeed to go so much between the hair that the hair is not protecting the ear, and they go too deeply, very skinny, very, very thinly, like in a dentist chair when it touches the nerve. It's very unpleasant. So the ear is a kind of an, how do you call it, a part of the body, a limb of, but not a limb, there is something even closer. Organ, thank you. The ear is an organ of touch. It's not so metaphorical. It's actually not metaphorical, it's very real. That's how we hear. So when I'm choosing things with the electronics, I'm able to really maximize that. So if I have a very, very high sine tone that is in an octave which we barely hear, and it makes, but it's not stable, it makes a kind of a very, very extreme road, it really scratches the skin of my ear. And if I repeat one of those high sounds, it can be kind of almost painful. And then it is almost like a kind of a dominanta to the tonica of the white noise that would just block it and get all the hair to lie down and protect my ear from that skinny pain. Yeah? So there is this game of what brings friction, what brings point sharpened line, what brings a very nice environment. In the end of the fourth act, there is a place that I always I'm so happy that we are getting to it, where there is kind of a small white noise, and we recorded many recordings of string orchestra, and there is a tail, which is barely audible, 2 seconds, of really lush harmony. And I always wait for it, because for me it's like, you know, when you have a sushi dinner and you have between the sushi the ginger to clear the palate. And sometimes the tastes are very intense, and you need to just, or when you try, excuse my examples, it's Saturday, when you try perfumes, and you try one perfume after the other in the airport when you have time to wait for your plane, and at certain point you cannot smell anymore. You just have to go and not smell anything. That harmony by the end of the fourth act was exactly that palate cleanser. So this was very much the basis of my choosing the electronics. And we are going to then look at one family. This thought brings me to the idea that the electronics would be organized in families. families of thickness, families of friction, families of this kind of, very blunt touch, or families of the very thin touch, etc. I'm going to show you the family which I call the speed train. I mean, I invented this name right now, the family of the speed train. So we have right in the beginning, again, I will just play and you can listen how this evolves between the acts. First appearance of that. Okay, and so it goes. Let's go to the now second act. Okay, that's the gates, and now. So, from the first appearance of the speed train, which was really like a train, almost like a train going in an unimaginable speed. When I explained to Carlo Lorenzi, my collaborator on the electronics, because I do not know how to do anything technically, and we actually work together. I write the score, and then I explain what I have in mind. He then continued to react to it, and we actually invent that together. We look for things on YouTube if we need examples, but we figure it out together. Anyway, but when I explained to him what I wanted with the speed train, my image was, imagine a Japanese speed train which goes through the jungle, and it goes through the jungle, and as it goes, it carries with it all the trees and all the things that it meets on his way. So it's not only the train itself, but also what joins the train in its wake, so to say. So that was the first one, and it was very blunt, very much in your face. I wanted to almost feel the wind on the skin. The second one was so much more refined and so much more far away. And I even started with the same chords that I had in the first one in the orchestra, but I peeled away from them all the more aggressive side to remain only with the soft stomach, so to say, of those chords. And then what we get is the sound of the train that begins to connect to the sound of the breathing. Yeah? I'm jumping now to the fifth act, because third and the fourth are more complex relationship. I will just jump to the fifth act to show you that train, kind of softer train and wind paradigm. You will immediately see the connection, right? So fifth act, 135. And we have to, I'm not starting exactly in the beginning. I'm taking, because this is a huge interlude and it's all built from, I will start in the beginning, though. It's important. Okay, here we go. Oh, no. Okay. It's starting immediately, though. What did I do here? Wait. Sorry, I'm in the wrong place. What did I do here? 135. Can't be. How did this happen? Okay, let's go here, see what's going on. Ah, yeah, it was right. Okay. Sorry. It was right, actually. It was just a little bit too early. All right, let's do this. I hope it will want to play. Okay, same train, wind now. I'm going to jump for a moment. So this continues to accumulate, and it gets here. I hope it plays. Oops, trying to jump. If my computer will agree. So here you have the wind with the orchestra, with the soloist, and that small interlude from the beginning has grown up to be like more than 10 minutes. Again, the zooming in to something that at first we only met its surface. I'm going then to the last act, where you will see the last reincarnation of that noise. No, they are not singing. Only the soprano was singing, but it was very, very inaudible. But you are not supposed to hear it. It's just like it's supposed to maybe be heard as if it exists or doesn't exist. exactly on that border. Okay, now in the last act, 2, 9. Okay. Yeah, let's. We need more. Yeah, here we go. Oh, okay. Okay. Entering 6th act, 12 seconds interval as with every act. And now the 6th act starts immediately with that sound I'm talking about. Reincarnation of the train. Okay, because I want to talk about a few more things, I will stop here. So, you have seen how we had the train, unadorned, with the kind of breathing train. Then we had a much more demure train that's connected to the breath in its own material. And now we had actually a gesture that was really quite clearly notated. Let me try to show you the notation of that. So the electronic as the soloist in this whole undertaking. Where are we here? I think we should just go a bit here. Oh, here we are. So this is the notation of the electronic here. You see that line? This score is, by the way, on the web. If you go to my publisher, Shot, Infinite Now, Czernowin, you can preview the score. So this line, yeah, is the electronics, and we are really following exactly what's written. Where here there are the clouds of what I call various dust, shiny dust, more grainy dust, things like that. So this is, for example, one of the gestures, or if we go here, the other gesture, yeah? And we have the soloist, so to say, the thing that comes in and out, and then we have a different kind of white noise, moving neutral. My names can be really funny if you try to read them and understand what's written. It's moving neutral, of course. Can't you understand what that is? Well, what it is, it's a kind of an empty white noise that is just moved as a neutral wall. It's coming closer, and it either, you know, goes inside the soloist line, which is very dynamic, or prefaces it, or etc. So this is the notation. And the person who engraves my score is a genius, and his name is Veselin Karatanasov, and he's Bulgarian. And he came to the premiere. Anyway, okay, so here we have the last incarnation, and you can see the distance that this traveled. I would like to also look at one more thing before we go for a break. And we actually covered quite well, almost I will have a tail of putting things together when we come back, and then I will be ready for your questions. So prepare them in the break. So the last thing I want to show you, no, that's not here, it's here. What I would like to show you is two places before we go out. And these are two places in the electronics that deal with the breathing. It's in the electronics because it is, you know, the people who are on the stage breathing, the first example. But that breathing is kind of melting and creating very close relationship with the sound files that we have on the electronics. And it's very related to what I was talking before about how wide is the band of listening in the ear. So let's listen and to that place, which for me is very, very important. It's from the third act. And it's a place where if we looked at the wide band as a category, in that place, that category cracks open, and we actually see within a place where all the hairs are falling down and are dead, we can see that even there is a differentiation. There are things which are sharper and less sharp within this very blunt category. So if we go from 1 to 10, saying that bluntness is 1 and sharpness is 10, and let's say that we are here only between 1 and 2. We zoom into the 1 and 2, and they become our new 1 to 10. That, by the way, is a compositional strategy. I hope you wrote that in your small diaries. All right, because that's a point that I work so many times with young composers on, that every place where you are, you have to realize the big spectrum of what you are doing and its possibilities, and see if you can allude to them, and you have to allude to also the small spectrum where you are, and see if you can go deeper there. So both directions are so important. Okay, so here is the place where that blunt place cracks open. If I succeed to get there, 56. Yeah. And then we will have a break. Okay, it's happening here. That's live. Okay, it's actually not so perfect here. What the singers are actually doing, and you will hear it when we work on it, is slower. And this really goes together with the background. The background has what I called a sea of cymbals. So we took, you know, a tremolo on cymbal, which was close. It was just a normal cymbal. And we put that together. And then we have the percussionists playing not suspended cymbal, but hi-hats. And they are closing and opening the hi-hat as they are tremoling, so that we have, that is what creates the different layers of same kind of character, but different sharpness. Okay, and my last example before we go to break is the beginning of the fourth act, which is a very important part in the opera. That's exactly here. And this is the place where we hear basically a recording of someone breathing. And working on that recording was really laborious because we wanted to really create a solo breathing that would be really intricate in terms of what you can hear, what you can release from just a simple breathing. It was the solo by Sylvain Kadar, the person who then was working in the opera to control the board, our sound engineer. And he is a yogist, so his breathing is very long. Okay, so let me just find it. Here, 1, 10, 26. And again, it's electronics, but it's naked breathing. So that's a place where those two elements are coming together. Because it's it becomes very, very huge, the breathing. Okay, here we go. Sorry, I don't know what it is.
Welcome to the BBC News Desk. We have breaking news.
And I will leave you with the BBC News Desk, and we will return here in 15 minutes. For the end of my presentation, I wanted to introduce one more thing before we move to you. And I was thinking, during the break that I actually prefer to stay with Infinite now and not to start Hidden, because Hidden is 45-minute long minute piece, and to start a whole new discussion doesn't seem to me it doesn't seem to me ideal. So let's just stay with infinite now. I will bring my last point, and then you will see that we have a lot to talk about. I'm sure that there will be conversation. All right. So my last point. Right. I wanted to look at mixing and separating things. And how does this work inside the canvas of the opera? So, for example, when we start listening to, in the first act, when we start listening to the voice, we have a very strong mixture, and I will look for it actually in my score to show you exactly how it looks on the score. Oops. All right. Oh, that's going to take forever. I don't know why it doesn't. Oh, here we go. All right. Let's see where we are. Okay. So the entrance of the voice is here. Let's look what happens here. We have the soprano, the contralto, and the bass. And I did not yet mention it, so let me go back and say that the forces of the singers work like this, that we have two trios. One trio is the soprano, contralto, and bass, which means that they are very far away, right? We have the contralto in the middle, soprano is much higher, bass is much lower. In the other trio, we have an altus, so contratenor, baritone, and mezzo-sopran, so much closer, okay? The trio number one, which is the closed trio with the altus, they are responsible to the front material. The trio number two with the contralto is responsible to the homecoming material. Now, we are in the homecoming material. I guess I cannot show two pictures, so I will just show this, and then I will look for it in the picture. You can see now. Let's make it bigger. This is very, very clear to see. Okay, the soprano, they are singing at a matter of fact, you can see it in the contralto because she is the soloist. As a matter of fact, I'm very familiar with this area. So, as a matter of fact, she is singing, and they are all singing. The bass is with them unisono on the first pitch, but then the contralt and the soprano are singing with breath, and then they are only breathing as a matter of this sign is the breathing in. When the triangle goes against the direction of the music, breathing in, breathing out, and just the small what do you call them? Consonants? No, the opposite. Consonant. Okay. Okay. I'm very, and when they say very, you can see the G sharp coming from down and up, and then they are again together. You can see that this is basically, I mean, we can look at it, it's very, there is a lot of information here in the voices. I would like to go to a very beautiful place and show something. So 3 voices are basically one voice, right? I smell an order. So this is this beautiful text. As a matter of fact, I'm very familiar with this house. For many times I've been here, something like, it's written much better, but I don't want to go back because many times. No, I'm sorry, I have to go back because I'm destroying it. It's not fair. Oh yeah, let me read the text. For some times I came here every day. However, now it's too dark and the moon is reluctant to come out and I can go only by instinct. I smell an order. Sorry to be reading like a secretary. I smell an order. It's from a small chestnut tree. Past the chestnut tree, dry grass crackles under my step. I know that soon afterwards I'm going to see a house. So let's just look at this. I try to really give the feeling of the woman in the dark walking, and how does she walk? How does she find her way? By her foot touching the grass, the sand crackles underneath, so it's all about touch. And when I divide one voice, where is it? Dry grass crackles under my wing. Past the tree. Okay. Dry grass crackles under my step. I give that to the soprano and to the contralto, but they are not speaking at the exactly unisono. Each of them is saying it's a slightly different, and that really gives me the feeling of the dry grass crackle under my foot. Why? Because when you step on something and it crackles, it doesn't crackle unisono, right? The touch is really, you step on it, you are unsure, yeah, so that is exactly the feeling of the crackling. I'm going to see a house, there is a certainty there, they are all unisono. So the voice is really not a real voice of a person like I'm talking now, but it's a magnification of a voice as a microscope of feelings, of sensations, of thoughts, of certainties, uncertainties. This is all imprinted in the score through the use of many parameters. Is it whispered? Is it sung? Is it breathed in or out? Is it unisono? Is it a slight unisono? Is it really different? Is one singing and the other one whispering? Is it a rhythmical unisono? So you can see that already in one drop of voice, I have a universe. Okay, I will try to find that place. It's not going to be easy, but let me try. I didn't write it down, but let me see if I can guess where it is approximately. Okay, very close. Okay. Here we go. Again, it's unedited, but
It's from a small chestnut tree. Past the chestnut tree, dry grass crackles under my step. I know that soon afterwards I am going to see a house. I will arrive without having to give it too much.
Okay. So, the total mixing of within the voice. Now, this was the voice of the story of Homecoming. When we are talking, we are in the first act, and when we are talking about front in the first act, it is only read by the actors. So we have really, sorry. No. Sorry. You will hear soon.
Chère maman, aux attaques de mai, j'ai poiré des boches. Et pour ça, j'ai reçu la croix de guerre. On parle de la sale race Boche. Je ne sais pas si c'est vrai ou si le monde le là-dessus aussi, mais les officiers allemands ne sont pas des hommes. Ce sont des monstres. C'est vraiment une sale vermine spéciale. Il faut les avoir vus de près, ces affreux grands raies de maigres comme des clous, et qui ont tout de même des têtes de veau, des tapes à gueule des serpents. Ça me turlupine chez nous quand il faut que je tue un cochon que je connais. Mais de ceux-là, j'en empocherais bien un. Et digne que l'armoire à linge.
All right. So both temporally and in the way that the sound is produced, things are totally separated in the first act. We have Homecoming, where everything is separated within one voice, and then we had the reading of front. And it establishes really a very blunt separation between the two participants of this dialogue. What is mixed, so that's the separation. What is mixed is the sound production of Homecoming. So within one sentence, we had the whispering, the talking, the singing, the breathing, everything. Okay? So that's what mixed and that's what separated in the beginning. Now, when we go all the way to the sixth act, what is separated and what is mixed is completely turned on its face. Let's give you an example from the sixth act. You have actually heard, let me just say it. So in the sixth act, both front and Homecoming are not sang or spoken live. They come from the loudspeakers, and they are all recordings. It's like those people have passed away a long time ago, and we just hear their voices recorded. And they are recorded, we tried to create various ways of distortion, you know, like a bad telephone. I wrote it in the score. You have bad Skype, broken telephone, pipes, you know, each of them with their own distortion, so that you really have the sense that these are devices and the voices are going through devices. I don't need to give an example. You still remember it, right? When it came from the... So in that sense, homecoming, what was separated in the beginning, homecoming totally separated from front, here really becomes one category. But now I have to figure that out. What is mixed... So the homecoming is mixed, and yeah, and in the end. Just a second. Yeah, right. And what is separated in the end, so what is mixed in the end is what is was separated in the beginning, homecoming front. What is mixed in the end is what was separated, which was separated in the beginning, which is in the beginning, it was, the homecoming and front brought together. What was mixed in the beginning was the sound production, the whispering with the breathing, and in the end, we have a small song, and that song is, I will go to the score. In that song, everything is separated. For one moment, you have everybody breathing. For one moment, everybody singing. Let me go to the end and show you the score to that. One of my favorite tunes of this opera, if I can get it there. No, that's not going to work. Here we go. Okay. Perfect. All right. Here we are. So this is the score with the reading. And now that's the G dissipating, as you can see in the brass. And now we have the tune. Yeah, here. Okay, this is the tune. You can see everybody unisono singing, breathing in, breathing out, singing, breathing. We will hear that. Breathing, singing, breathing, singing. So this is now really separated. A small solo of the singing, but everybody singing. Yeah? So it is almost like, I find it also in other pieces by other composers, as if there is a kind of a balance between what is shown as clear and what is unclear. And what happens throughout a piece is that one thing that was unclear becomes clear, but at the same time, something that was clear before becomes unclear, so that the total data, in a way, the total clarity of the data remains always the same. Yeah? Do you understand? Is that clear? Only it's like the flashlight shows various places and clarify or unclarify different things within that universe, but you are not allowed to gain complete clarity at any moment or complete unclarity at any moment. And of course, those proportions are very, very finely varied, yeah? And one plays with them, and that is actually one of the means to create this long-term tension that, doesn't allow you to fall asleep in the opera. even though maybe some people do fall asleep. I fell asleep 3 times. It's Stalker of Tchaikovsky. So that's what I tell myself when people say, you know, I couldn't. Anyway, so let's try to hear that song that happens here, which is that stacked song. Okay, we are here 6 to 9. Let's go 2. Yeah, it's almost at the end, and it's really what I love about that song, because of the stacking, is that I'm going to show it to you. I hope I will get to the place. What I love about it is that it's repetitive, and it has rhythmical unities, and it is very easy to predict them after a while, and it's very satisfying, because this piece, to some degree, lacks rhythm. I mean, it has in various spaces. That's why I have my soloists, the guitars, the plucked instruments. But that's a real rhythm here, and it's very pleasurable to hear a real rhythm suddenly. So let's hope that I get there. Doesn't want to. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. We get there. We are getting there. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, the G takes forever. I think now we are there.
Wir haben keine Leute und keine Munition mehr. Doch der Feldzug geht weiter. Das Sterben geht weiter. Nie ist uns das Leben in seiner kargen Gestalt so begehrenswert erschienen wie jetzt.
Listen to the voice now.
Und das Fließen des Wassers.
It becomes a real voice.
Und der lange Schlaf.
No distortion.
Oh Leben. 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 Sommer 1918. Über die verbrannten Felder streicht ein rasendes Fieber der Ungeduld, der Enttäuschung.
In the darkness.
Warum macht man kein Ende?
I put on my clothes and then sit in the living room with the owner every day without exception.
etc. Okay, and this is the end of what I've prepared to talk about. So, as you can see, everything comes together. The vertical structure, the zooming in, what is mixed, what is not mixed. And if you think about what is mixed and what is not mixed, you can see that the picture in the end is much more monolithic, because it's really like looking at huge structures from very, very close. All the recorded voices together, all the vertical, vertical stacking of the various voice production, yeah? Rather than the more horizontal separation, horizontal stacking of various vocal production. So when you are looking horizontally, it is much more about the flow, it has much more variety. When you are looking vertically, you are much more in the present, in a way. And we are brought to that point of the present, where the presence, basically, the presence is revealed through the stories. And we realize that this is what lied underneath all these stories. It was the moment of that present, and it was the moment when the actor's voice become actually suddenly not distorted. It's such a small thing, but it's so important when he starts saying life, or life, because he's talking about the war and how come we don't stop it, etc. And then we hear noise of water. Water for me is very, very connected to life. We hear the voice of different kind of waters. This is also explained in the score. Not one type of water, but again, a kind of accumulation of various way of flowing. And then the voice of the actor clears up as he remembers life, so to say. Yeah? And then we get into that song. All right, I think that we are good with the presentation, and we can see some bubbles on my computer, or we can completely close it, and we can start talking. I think we can close the, yeah, exactly. Thank you, Eric, for all your help. All right, so I'm ready for you. Hi, yes, I see you. You were thinking the whole, I really put you on the spot. All right, yes.
Hello. Yes, I wanted to ask you about, I don't know if it's too intimate, but maybe you can talk about the creation process, how you prepare an opera. Like I have written a bit of opera, and I would be curious to know how you structure such a long piece of music and theater. How do you, and also how you work with the libretto. Like, how did you get the text, in which form, and what did you do with it to make this piece, for example?
So 2 questions. I will start with the text, since it's a much easier one to answer. I got once everything was decided upon, that we are going for it, and it will be comprised from both materials. I got the material from Luc Perceval of Frant. I got the play text, and I took out of it the places that interested me, and I took from the Sanchouet story, from Homecoming, the places that I wanted, and I created the text, basically. I created the text and was very helped by Luc Houston, the dramaturg of the Ghent Opera, to bring it together. We were actually meeting here in IRCAM and deciding on what type of philosophy. We didn't want, we mainly wanted things that are happening now, but in front there were a lot of things that were more descriptions. So the text that I chose in the beginning was much more text that happened, also from front. Then we showed it to our friend Luke, and he said that all of my choices of front were very superficial, and he suggested his, which were really heavy texts. The text that you have seen partly. And I saw that he is very, very strong, that he really wants those texts to be there. And I thought to myself that actually it's really not bad. So this is something that I really do believe in. Sometimes, you know, you do what you think helps your imagination, right? You choose what kind of makes your imagination jump or prickle. You can begin to see stars. Oh, I could do this and this and this. And you think, this is good. I will take it. What he brought to me was like not exactly tasty food for my imagination. My imagination said, are you sure? I don't know if I can deal with it. It's so pathetic. It's so strong. Too big on me. And I said, oh, that's an opportunity for us to work. Because sometimes when you get, sometimes, not always, when you get something that doesn't immediately light up a fire, it can create something which is deeper if you give, because it needs to cook. And that's how I took it, and I took it upon myself to actually really, as he was open to me, inviting me to bring Tzan Shue, I wanted to give him the, you know, the priority in introducing his, I didn't want to slash his theater piece that I was supposed to make an opera from. It totally doesn't make any sense. So that's how those parts were welcomed into the text, into the libretto. So the libretto is a work of 3 people, of Luke, Perceval, Luke Houston, the dramaturg, and myself. And of course, Tzan Shue and all the other resources. That's how that was done. And when I was writing the opera, I really didn't want so much text. Because I knew that for every grain of text, I have to have 5 minutes of music surrounding it. Because this is not an opera which could bring text after text. You really need to prepare to create. It is this weave where the text is an occurrence that has to be really prepared for. So, yeah, we fought very hard on every text that I took out. But I fought with nails sometimes, and I succeeded to take out some of the texts.
And just another question about the libretto and the text. How do you choose, like, what is your feeling about which text is to be sung and which text is to be spoken or going through the loudspeaker?
I talked about it before. Every text goes through the loudspeaker. Everything goes through the loudspeaker. Nothing here is acoustic. Nothing in this opera is acoustic. But, you know, as I said before, the quality of the text is what dedicates what are the vocal productions that I would put there, yeah? And the front text, most of the time, is just read, yeah? Now, to your answer, the other question, there is no short answer. How do you construct something like that? For me, this piece was something that it was an unforeseeable present, in a way, because when I got it, I actually had an idea for a totally different opera, which is a love story, which is the next thing I'm going to do. And I was very keen on doing this next opera and was very inspired to do it. And I thought to myself, okay, I will just do this infinite now. I knew the text from the beginning, so that I can then jump to my new opera. And then I dived into infinite now, and I drowned. And I just really, I lived in this space for a whole year. And to tell you how when I kind of dived, how I created it or how I structured it, I have to say, for example, today I only discovered that G in the first gate, you know, the whole story of the G I was totally unaware of. It was a journalist who looked at the score and said the G is so important. How? And then I look and I see as if somebody really meticulously planted the development of the G, but I was not doing it in a very aware way. I was very aware of the verticality. So it was like looking at a structure that you look at from very far away. At first, you know, very, very strange things. I thought about two places between the whispering and the singing that I want to cover, which was like a huge beach. That beach later I discovered was the road between the E to the G, actually. It's very strange, you know, things are connected in very underground ways. But one thing I can say, I probably drew about 30, for every act I drew so many structural drawing, which I then made better, you know. So I would draw, let's say, a structural drawing for the first three minutes. And I would have a general drawing because I knew after these 3 minutes how it's going to go on. But when I would write these 3 minutes, I would already have gone through 5 better structures that would, of course, change everything that come later. So it's like you have to know where you are in a structure at every moment. But you have, but for me, writing this piece, I had to be able to change every detail that I needed for every moment, and with it change my overall topology or picture. And that is what's for me so satisfying about writing this piece, that the material and the form are really not dialectic. This is a piece where material molds the form molds material. It's the same, you know. It's absolutely the same. Yes. 1, 2, yeah.
Could you speak a little bit about the role of the solo instruments in the opera?
Solo instruments, 2 guitars, 1 electric, one acoustic, and the two cellos are basically one instrument, and this is the instrument of light. As I said before, there is not much rhythmical articulation in this piece. It's kind of melted. Everything is very majestically melted. And I got very tired of it. And it was very clear to me that I really need to make some articulation in this web of melting. And that is the role of the soloist. So they play those basically punctual arpeggios that create, you know, together with the bird wings that go around the hall, because the guitar can also do something very similar to the bird wings when they swish and those things give a lot of light. The articulation, the articulation of the bird wings, etc. It brings rhythm and it brings pluckedness, which is very clear, as opposed to all those clusters. Again, it is the other side of something in the ear. Instead of always mushy mud, which I love so much, unfortunately, then you get some diamonds sometimes. Yeah, not too much, but yeah.
Hello, thank you for your presentation. My name is Diego, and I would like to ask about your relation with symbolism in your work, which for me is very strong and very clear in this piece, especially the water and the breathing and what does that mean, and the immediate sensitive presence of it, which is also for me very strong in the like these sounds which are very intense and these textures and these sort of sound carpets, and also the presence of the singers and the actors on stage. So how do you find yourself in between these two modes of expression, or these two worlds?
Which two words?
The symbolism, the meaning, or the associations of these elements, and the immediate bodily presence, which we can hear immediately.
Okay. How interesting to think about it. Just a small correction. I always dislike it when people say sound carpets or sound blankets, because it gives a feeling of flatness and it gives a feeling of passivity. And I am really not about both.
Okay.
So, because the carpet can suddenly come and walk for me
I guess it depends on the carpet, yeah.
And it's not a carpet.
Okay.
It's the sounds are not a carpet.
Thank you.
They are not. They are fields. I like fields. Fields are more alive. Things can happen in the fields, but carpets are just lying down. You know, fields is better, I think, to express the same idea. All right. So. Symbolism and presence. Symbolism as opposed to presence. I think that presence for me is extremely, extremely important. And as I talked about the ear as the organ of touching, that is very connected to presence. And I try to create sound images or sound presences that really are very vulnerable. And that is what, for example, is very different than the music that I used to write in the 90s. The fast music, very masked. The vulnerability was not exactly allowed to be there so much in that sense, like it is now. The symbolism is kind of a subconscious element of this. It's true. I mean, I bring here even the BBC News is a very, very symbolistic act, right? Because the middle of the breathing, that is really actually for me a kind of an internal reference to the movie The Sacrifice by Tarkovsky. If you remember, there was a part, whoever saw the movie, there is a part there, and I've seen it many, many years ago, so it's just a very vague memory for me. But there is a part there where it's a family or a big group of people in the house are all kind of listening to the radio because it's going to tell them. Do you remember what was there exactly? Can you say? Yeah. But the radio is going to say something very crucial about what's going to happen, if it's war or not, if they have to leave their house or not. And they are all listening to the radio. And that was that moment where, I talked, that was this very political moment in that opera. That, you have the breathing, which of course is musically belong to all those elements that I talked before. And suddenly the breathing is of one person that we are very intimately listening to because his breathing is magnified in time and in everything. And then into this intimacy that we are allowed to experience comes the radio, which is so, which is just so alienating, but is so crucial at that moment. In that sense, that I think is a moment of very pure, what you call symbolism. I don't know if it's the right way, but it is definitely, it has to do with the semantic of the sound. Yeah, not its real naked presence, but its meaning in the world. And I think that it is a very nice way to describe what is happening here, the naked presence of sound and its quality as sound in relationship to the way we hear, and its meaning. Both of them, if there is both of them are the element with which I really work. And I've heard that before from not one person, that it's almost as if I am, through music, I try to create actually not music. I try to create naked feelings or shadow of feelings or real experience or something that comes very close to life. This is actually what I aspire to. But one person told it to me in a very interesting way. She said, it's almost like you take music in order to create something in totally another media, the media of naked feeling, sensations, or something like that. Because if you think about music, you know, the music which is music, it is something else many times, right? Even today, when we listen to a lot of music. So I am, in a way, very tired of the music, which is still singing and dancing. For me, I want to get out of it. I don't want to sing and dance. I want to open it up and to just smell, breathe, touch through sound. Yeah. Yes.
I have a question in the same direction. I have an impression sometimes it was a moment that touched me a lot, because sometimes an opera can, history can be the subject of an opera. But I think in this case, I don't know, it's my feeling, I feel sometimes that I heard the voice of the history. I think the place you give to the voice is really very special. And it was a small moment. I feel as I was listening to the voice of history, the real voice of history. And I think maybe it's because sometimes these sounds, they are also documental sounds, and they are also charted of historical temporality. I feel like if I can connect with the time that the record was made. And this, I think, is very beautiful, because in general, composers are trying to evacuate it, to give to the sounds, recorded sound, a kind of neutrality. And I love, because you assume that the recorded sound is full of the time that the recorded was made. And for me, this is very touching. So I'd like to know if sometimes you was thinking about history or not, or if just came. And also because each historical period is also full of a sense of time. And for me, you were really dealing with time and temporality.
Well, this opera is about time, but in a totally different way than you are mentioning. Just will say it very fast, and then I will get to that. I really tried to make time do very strange things here, really not behave normally. So, you know, just say it and then leave it away. Yes, there are. It's very, very interesting what the two of you were talking about. So, when you take, for example, no, I will start with a different example. In the third act and in the fourth act, we have in the interlude a group of people talking, and they are talking, and there are there is a lot of action with this talking. And when you listen really, really well, we took some songs of Edith Piaf, and we took another song of, I don't remember the name, of a male singer with the orchestra, and we cut, 2 seconds from here, 4 seconds from here, and you can really, if you listen, you actually hear it. You hear a whole transition of that sing, and we did something very corny, that we changed slightly the pitch. So it comes in, and you are not sure, am I hearing that or not? And before you are sure, it's gone. There was also a movie about the Second World War, the First World War. I don't remember which one it is. I have it written somewhere, but we took a whole scene for it. And in this interlude where people are talking, we are having that scene in a restaurant from that movie. So you just hear the utensils, but the sound of that restaurant is not like a sound of restaurant today. So just to talk, and I think this will be interesting as answer to both of you. So in that place where we have the people talking in the beginning of the fourth act, and on the third act, I think too, we have the people talking, which is a small piece by itself, because they're how excited they are. It's all notated, how quiet it is, what kind of group it is, etc. This is one thing. And then we have underneath it the restaurant of the First World War. And even more underneath it, and this really answers your question really like word to word, because the last layer is something I found on Facebook, which was a huge cloud of, what do you call them? אווזים, לא תרנגולות. Goose. Huge cloud, they were walking like crazy, like hundreds of them. You know, you had this carpet of hundreds of goose passing by. And we took this carpet and we put it underneath the voices. So you do not ever hear it, but it's there. So you have the goose making the people sound really weird, but you don't know why. And underneath this, you have the scene of the First World War, connected it into some kind of a strange atmosphere, which we have seen in movies, and we are, again, it's almost like I'm trying to create a subconscious to the sound. And that subconscious is partly subconscious of presence, as would be the goose, and subconscious of history, as would be the small parts of the songs and the restaurant, and subconscious, yeah, again, the last one is, of course, of presence, of all of those things together. But that presence is quite combined by it's a cake with many, many layers. And you cannot eat only the cherries. You have to eat the whole thing together because you don't know anything exists. Yeah, I have 1 and 2 and 3. Okay. I will try to answer fast.
Thank you so much for your lecture. It is for me very hard to approach your lecture with concrete thoughts because I have to start using perception in a way to be able to receive what you're bringing to us. So I had to stop making notes to be able to be present in what was happening. So please allow me to use the improvisation in a way.
Of course, we all improvise.
Thank you. So how can you, what can you say, or how can you extend in the process that you do to separate your subjectivity when you approach this kind of work, which is very intensive and very responsible? How can you not protect? I was thinking about protect the idea, but I have to change the word for position. How can you position the idea that you're working with to be able to see the narrative, and in that way bring your craft, your composition, your meaning into the work is more for us, for me as a composer, to learn how not to replicate, but how to learn the position, how to put myself in a position, because it's not protecting. Maybe sometimes I have to suffer. And you were talking about layers, and for me, I see that you have to detach a little bit yourself to be able to see the multidimensional elements that happen. So how can you talk a little bit of that process that I see that you have to go through in this opera? Thank you.
I want to understand better because I do not exactly understand. Can you detach myself from the materials? From where? From what?
From the original materials when they're doing the research before starting to work, and as you are working through the composition, how to keep that openness in a way, not just focusing on the small, on the little elements, but going back to the big narrative. That's for me is more the line of the question.
And you mean the big narrative of the material or the big narrative that I'm proposing?
Of the material before going to your.
So are you asking how to continue to take care of the material?
Yes.
Yeah.
Of the idea that the material is bringing to you.
Well, these are two things, because what I hear in your question, I hear two things. I hear, and tell me if I'm wrong, I hear you positioning the original materials, and you're asking how do you give them respect? How do you, First World War is a huge subject. Yes. How do you give it respect?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't. Okay. So, and this is really important because it is not, I'm not saying it lightly. So, I have to explain that. What does it mean I don't? It doesn't mean that let me be very, very honest here. The reason why I want to write a piece would never be because it's First World War. What do I have to do with First World War? I don't. It's connected to Second World War, with which I have a lot to do because I'm a second generation to the Holocaust. But that is in general, I do not connect to history, actually. I'm not a person who looks back. So my access to some material, it's never that I want to take this material and show it for what it is. If I choose a material, usually what it means that this material has confidential information that I do not know in the beginning what it is, but I'm very interested in that. So the tension between First World War material that I saw in Luc Perceval's theater piece, the tension between this to the story Homecoming was really very exciting to me, and it pointed to something, but I had no idea what it was. And that is what I have respect for. I try to find what it is, and I try to get it out, and it's very hard to get out. So those materials are like heavy, important doors to something that I have to say. And I do not, how can I say that? I respect these materials. I do not throw them away. I do not do something totally. You could see the First World War is very present here, as is the story, Homecoming. But, so I admit that they are there because I need them as the beginning points of that journey. And the journey is to find what is there to say from today, from my particular person about that. Because I'm not a historian. I will never be an historian. A brilliant historian would have amazing things to say about First World War, but that is not what I'm supposed to do. I'm coming today, in my age, today, in my life situation, and I'm looking back because I want to understand something about our situation as people today. In that sense, the respect goes towards what is that can be found in the material. And that finding is not by skipping over the material or swimming below it. It is by going into the material completely open-eyed and trying to figure it out, what is hiding there. And because I have relationship, the connection is very, very airy, so I can really find a lot of air to look for that answer. So this is how I work. And that respect that you are talking about is for me something that can really inhibit me as a composer. And just to say another 2 words about that, the opera I wrote before, about 11 years ago I wrote it, was that I was asked to write an answer to Mozart's Saide, which was unfinished. And I had to write a contrapoint piece. Had I had respect, I had to work for months and months and months to take away my respect to Mozart, because otherwise I would not be able to write a note. I had to find a situation where I'm basically talking to him. And in that sense, I created a structure where actually the most important word in that opera, Saida Adama, is Mozart's, because when the person in my small opera is almost dead and really miserable, then the Mozart person is answering the bad people in my opera, and he's saying, how could you take her freedom? So he's talking from the grave, but he's talking now. And he's very, very actual for now. And so, but you understand that if I had respect, I could not have arrived to this moment, because I could never have put us in the same, and I had to put us on the same place if I wanted to create something meaningful. So this is the work. It's actually a work of really looking for what is that I have to say. And actually believing that it's worthwhile, which is not to be taken for granted. It's a lot of work there, right there. Yes.
Thank you.
Oops. Yeah. There was, you wanted also, right? Okay, Aaron. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the lecture. I have a question about the balance of the singers and the instrumental or the electronic part, because in operas, singers have a very, very special role. And in these fragments we heard today, I sometimes had the feeling that the instrumental part and the singers sort of become one. And at some points, they are very separate too. So I'd like to know, for you, what is the sort of vision of the ideal interaction between singers and instrumental part in an opera? Thank you.
You mean in general in opera?
Well, for you, what do you think an opera, yes, maybe, or actually you can focus on this opera too.
I mean, there is nothing which I would call ideal. There is no ideal. That's the news, right? The news is that there was an ideal, right? Bel canto, the voice, and the orchestra just serving the voice, etc. No longer exists. Everything is open. Everything is open not because you can do whatever you want, whatever. No, that's not it. You have to have a kind of a principle and a position of to do what you are doing, to ask yourself, why am I doing what I'm doing? In my case, the whole opera is about the idea of revealing and covering, as we spoke about. So it's very clear that with our attachment to the voice, which is I have written a lot about it, that, you know, how problematic it is to write to the voice because we are so connected to the voice. And because of this, it gets always a patina of pathos that we have absolutely no control on. And I hate that pathos. So my war is in a way with that pathos through the music. So, yeah, for me, the idea that the voices come underneath a very big blanket of the field or blanket of the G. In that case, it is a blanket because it's very passive and kind of choking, and the voices are hiding inside. That is a situation of concealment of the voice, which is very important, you know. So there is no ideal, there is no rule of law. There are a lot of possibilities, but they have to always answer to the question why. Yeah.
Thank you.
I wanted to know if you could speak a little bit more about, well, I guess one of the things that's really interesting for me is you spoke a lot about time and temporality. And if you could speak, and you mentioned your music, your previous music in the 90s being this different kind of fast, layered type of thing, while in this I see a more, as you said, monolithic type of glacial movement, which I really love. And I wonder if, A, you think that's just something that you've been moving towards generally, or if this is something specific to this work, and also if you think that glacial type of temporality has something to do, as you said before, with vulnerability, and also because you see it a lot in the movements as well, not only in the music but also in the movements of. I didn't get to see the opera stage like this at the Philharmonie, so it's really interesting to see that the movements mirroring the kind of glacial movement of the music, and I think that to me that has something to do with vulnerability because of we don't often see movement so slow like that, and I'd just like to hear more about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is not only that piece. If you Hidden is going to come out. It's not a piece that many people heard because it has not yet been recorded, but it's coming out in September. Hidden is the first piece where I kind of came into that room. But I've been going there for a very long time, and there are even pieces in the 90s that already kind of project this. I think that, yes, that is a room I'm going to stay for in a long time, but I never stay in a room in a way. So the room becomes a kind of an area. And for example, in the cello concerto I'm writing now, there are small windows where suddenly everything is really, really fast for a moment. Inside huge fields of color, which is almost like Rothko type of vitality of color. So I think that it constantly grows and changes. But this is actually a big continent that I'm discovering now. And it's here to stay probably for about 5 to 7 years. Yeah. Yes.
When during the process did you decide that you need the electronics? When did it happen?
Right in the beginning. Yeah, before. I mean, I knew that Hidden is a piece which has a lot of electronics, which we did together with Carlo Lorenzi as well. And I had no doubt that this is just the beginning of our creating the vocabulary together. Yeah.
My question will be, I mean, there are two things that I have been quite a fan of your music, or especially of your musical thinking, whenever I have the opportunity to come to a lecture, and it is that somehow, for me, you visualize, or the musical material, the layers of musical material can be think as a space thing, that they gain depth and perspective according where they are, and I see a lot of non-linearity thinking more and more, and I was wondering how, if there is any layer of that in the diffusion of the, because there was where the things come in the speakers and things like that, if there is a kind of integration of these ideas in the space,
Did you come to the Philharmonic?
Yeah.
So did you hear it?
I know there are, but I was wondering if you could talk a little bit
about that.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So of course, there is specialization is extremely important, and the space is extremely important. And I really, from the beginning, was referring to the various acts as bigger or smaller spaces, or more open or closed, or really physical spaces. And I just will give a small example from the fifth act. There is a place there. It's a pity that it's all closed, but we are at the end. So in the fifth act, there is a place where after the huge wind that gets a very high point, we go down, and there is only a tremolo, very, very quiet tremolo of the quartet. And the altus is, the quartet is playing an A, the altus is singing a C, and they all disappear. But when they disappear, we suddenly hear from all the speakers, we hear thousands of small hands on skin drums. And we hear only the fingers. And it's, for me, a very, very seminal moment, because what was an open room suddenly became an open, horizon, exactly. Horizon. And the horizon is huge because we have, from all the speakers, from each speaker, different signals of that really quiet, and the quietness of the sound actually does not allow it to open up, because it's just one sound. So you have in one place, let's say it's around one pitch, even though it's not pitched, but let's say that the pitch of the snare drum or the bongos that they are touching is maybe a second, or at the most a second, and almost a third, a minor third, let's say, even. No, it's not. No, it is a second, at the most. It's almost unisono. So it's so much activity, but on one pitch. But it's not a pitch. Yeah, it's always changing. So you have a field which is very changing, but it's very small. It's skinny because there are not so many pitches there. So you get this horizon. So from a room, you suddenly change, modulated, to a huge horizon. For me, that place always works in every hall. And the strange thing about it is that when it works, I feel the cold wind in the hall. I can't explain it. But I suddenly feel as if, oh, wow, there is the cold wind. We arrived to the cold wind. So that kind of a modulation, yeah. All right, the two last questions, 1 and 2, and then we will have to break for lunch.
Hi, thank you for your lecture. And I would like to do, I think, a rather general question, but it's really important for me to absorb other people's way of thinking,
okay,
to think myself about my way of thinking.
Okay.
And you said before that you always give advice to your student composers about the structure, to think about the big thing they are looking for, and then to really dive into the small thing and see if they can achieve that. And I was wondering, when you commit yourself to write a work, it can be an opera or a solo work, anything. If you think about the idea first, the idea comes to mind, or do you have sketches, or when you sit to write the first mark on the paper, the first note, the first line, if that line and that note and whatever is already thought about, or if it is struggle to put it there, how does your mind connect to the moment of truth?
I don't know if my mind connects to the moment of truth. It's trying, but I have books and books and books. For every piece, I have books that I write. I love books, you know, never with lines, just smooth pages, and I write a lot of words for every piece. So I have a notebook for every piece I write. At least one. For the opera, I have like 3 big notebooks. And I write a lot of words that help me to get closer to what I want. And as I said, so many sketches. So that's how I work. I work through color, painting sketches, you know, structural sketches, writing a lot of words, talking to myself. And then when I put the first speeches, then the real conversation starts, because the first speeches are telling me, here we are, that's what you have put here. So now I have to disconnect myself and see what it's telling me. Because it's not always the same. It's not always that you put on the paper what you think you want to put. Sometimes you put something on the paper and it's a little bit different, and you have to listen to it and see what it's really saying, so that you will be in touch with it. And I wanted to also just, you said that I said to my student to look at the big thing and the small thing. That was not accurate. What I said was, and this is important to understand, I said not the big thing and the small thing. I said that if you create something which has that range, it's very important to see the full range of that, to see if you are maybe not using a huge part of what is available to you as a trajectory. Okay? That is not only the big thing, it's something else. And when you look at the small thing, also, not to see it as small, but to see it as huge, and to find inside itself, yeah, all the possibilities. So if that is 1, 2, that's the example I gave, and that is 1 to 2, then the 1 to 2 becomes like 1 to 10, because it has all this gradation, yeah? Within the gray, I find the huge deep gray and the very, very light gray. And suddenly, inside the gray, I discover a universe. But I never should forget that the gray is only one part moving from black to white. And maybe at some point, I would like to bring something black or white in order to refer. So it's a totally different paradigm than just looking at the big or the small. I just wanted to make.
Thank you.
All right. I think that we had another one, or yes, one last question.
Thank you. I had a question about the process of production.
Yes.
In the beginning of the talk, you mentioned that the writer of Front, Luc Perceval, at some point allowed his text to be cracked open so that you can fragment it or put it in relation to this other text. And I was wondering if for you there was a moment in the production where your text, the music, was also cracked open by the register of production, or can you imagine a scenario where your text is kind of to like go to this notion of respect, can be disrespected to maybe reveal something else, or was it from beginning to end more or less retained as it is?
Well, in general, my approach to creation is that if it doesn't crack open, I missed something. So I am very weary, or I don't know how to call it. Let's say, it's a very personal thing, but for me, and it might be different in relationship to different composers, but for example, I'm such a strong admirer of late Beethoven. And you know, in the second part of Beethoven, everything is kind of cracked open, but I don't feel a lot is cracked open. But in the third period, none of the pieces, when it finished, you are never in the place where you came out. It's such a journey of the soul with the late quartets, for example. You start in a certain point and you find yourself in the end in a very strange exit point. And the same is true for me with Gesualdo, for example, or Schumann. And for myself, I would say that, not comparing, but if a piece, for me, creates a field, because every piece, when it starts, it creates a field of action, right? It creates a field of action for itself. We hear it, for example, very strongly in pieces by Bernard Langs. That type of minimalism is very, very good for that. They create a field of action, and then the piece tries to show the universe of this field of action and try to show its variability and how it can surprise us within that field of action. And that is right for that media or that kind of statement. For me, for my type of search or work in music, if in the beginning I've written something and created a field of action, and in the end I find myself in the same field of action, it means that I have failed. So the break must happen someplace, and maybe even more than one break. I want to have a journey which really created, maybe there is something which created depth. And the notion of depth, I think, it really comes from the painstaking process of breaking something and re-gluing it or finding another solution to it. There is a notion that you cannot just be in one place. You have to see what happened. When you risk it, you must risk. For me, I must risk. And that risk needs to get so radical that something will break or happen to experience the fragility of what that preposition that I gave had. Something like that. Thank you very much for your listening. I enjoyed the talk, and we can always talk more when I'm around here. So have a great weekend. And thank you.